Lines in the sand. Captain Ilara Voss tried to maintain her composure as she entered the grand chamber of the Galactic Consortium. The massive hall stretched before her, its crystalline ceiling arching hundreds of meters overhead, capturing light from the three suns of Proxima Centauri and scattering it in prismatic patterns across the polished floor. Despite the beauty, she couldn't shake the feeling that the room had been designed to intimidate. "Remember why we're here," she whispered to her team of 5 representatives. "Earth is depending on us." 73 alien species watched from their elevated positions as the humans approached the center of the chamber. Some had multiple sets of eyes, others possessed exoskeletons that glinted in the light, and a few seemed to shift between physical states. All regarded the humans with what Voss could only interpret as cold curiosity. At the highest position sat Archon Desrix of the Valheri, the eldest species in the consortium. His translucent skin revealed a network of pulsing veins, and his 6-fingered hands tapped rhythmically against his ceremonial staff. "Humans of Sol." Desrix's voice resonated through the chamber, amplified by unseen technology. "We welcome you to galactic civilization." Voss bowed slightly. "The people of Earth thank you for this opportunity. Humanity is eager to join the interstellar community as peaceful contributors." "Yes, yes," Desrix interrupted with a dismissive wave. "We have prepared the terms for your integration." A holographic display materialized before Voss. As she read, her expression darkened. These weren't fair terms, they were demands. Earth would be limited to developing only 5 star systems. Human military vessels would be reduced by 70%. A development tax of 40% would be imposed on all resources extracted from non-Earth worlds. Human ships could not travel beyond designated routes without consortium escorts. Voss looked up, struggling to contain her indignation. "These aren't terms for partnership. They're conditions for servitude." A ripple of clicking sounds, perhaps laughter, moved through the assembly. "Your species is volatile and unpredictable," said a bulbous creature to Desrix's right. "These measures ensure collective security." Dr. Maya Chen, Earth's senior diplomat, stepped forward. "Humanity has overcome centuries of conflict to achieve global unity. We've explored our solar system without aggression toward any species." "After how many wars?" asked another representative, this one appearing as a swirling mass of tentacles. "Your history is drenched in bloodshed." "And yours isn't," Chen countered, her voice steadied despite her rising anger. "Every intelligent species has its violent chapters." Desrix raised his staff, silencing the chamber. "Enough debate. These terms are generous for a species barely a century into space travel. You should be grateful for our protection." "Protection from what?" Voss asked, her military training evident in her stance. "From the dangers that lurk in the void," Desrix replied, his voice suddenly cold. "There are threats beyond your comprehension. Without us, your species would not survive a millennium." Voss exchanged glances with her team. They had come hoping for genuine alliance, not thinly veiled threats. "We need time to consider these terms," Voss said finally. "Take 3 Earth days," Desrix replied. "But know that these conditions are non-negotiable." As the human delegation exited the chamber, Voss felt a weight settle in her chest. She had expected challenging negotiations, but this was different. The consortium didn't want partners. They wanted vassals. Back on their ship, Horizon, the Earth team gathered in the conference room. "They're not negotiating in good faith," Chen said, tossing her datapad onto the table. "These demands would cripple Earth's development for generations." Commander Raj Patel, their military advisor, nodded. "And that bit about protection, classic protection racket. Create a threat, then charge for safety." Voss stared out the viewport at the massive consortium station. Its architecture was unlike anything humans had created, a testament to technology centuries beyond Earth's reach. "We need to be careful," she said quietly, "but we also need to stand firm." Lieutenant Sarah Okonkwo, their intelligence specialist, cleared her throat. "Captain, there's something you should see." She projected a series of intercepted communications onto the main screen. While they were giving us the grand tour yesterday, I managed to access some unsecured data channels. The team reviewed the information with growing concern. The data revealed a pattern. New species incorporated into the consortium invariably saw their technological growth slow dramatically. Resources were systematically diverted to older members. Species that resisted found themselves facing mysterious pirate attacks until they agreed to increased protection. "It's a pyramid scheme on a galactic scale," said Dr. Takumi Nakamura, their senior scientist. "The older species maintain control by keeping newer members dependent and afraid." Voss stood, her decision crystallizing. "Then we need to show them humanity doesn't scare easily." 3 days later, they returned to the Grand Chamber. The audience had grown, with observation decks now filled with representatives from dozens of worlds, all curious to see how the newcomers would respond. Archon Desrix looked down with his silver eyes. "Has Earth considered our generous terms?" Voss stepped forward, her voice clear and unwavering. "We have, and we have prepared a counterproposal." Murmurs spread through the chamber. No new species had ever countered the consortium's initial terms. "Earth proposes a fair partnership," Voss continued. "Equal exchange of scientific knowledge, reasonable resource taxation of 8%, unrestricted development of uninhabited systems, and retention of our defense forces." The chamber fell silent before erupting in sounds that translated as derisive laughter. A slender, purple-skinned delegate rose to speak. "Your species truly fails to understand its position," the alien said, voice tripping with condescension. "Your primitive evolutionary framework makes you think you deserve equal standing." How amusing. The alien continued speaking, each sentence more insulting than the last. He called humans clever apes and barely sentient primates who had accidentally stumbled onto the cosmic stage. Voss listened silently, her team's expressions hardening with each word. They had come with hope, but that hope was dying with every insult hurled their way. The alien was still speaking when Voss suddenly straightened her shoulders. Something had changed in her eyes. Resignation replaced by resolve. "Enough," she said, her voice cutting through the alien's tirade. The chamber quieted, surprised by her interruption. "We came seeking mutual respect and fair terms," Voss said. "You offer neither." She turned to her team and nodded. Without a word, they began collecting their devices and materials. "What are you doing?" Desrix demanded, genuine confusion in his voice. "We're leaving," Voss replied simply. "The negotiations aren't finished," the Archon insisted. "Yes, they are," Voss countered. "Earth didn't send us to accept surrender terms. We came to meet new friends and allies. Clearly, that's not what the consortium offers." The human team formed a line behind Voss and began walking toward the exit. The chamber erupted in shocked exclamations. "Your species cannot survive alone in this galaxy," Desrix called after them, his voice echoing off the walls. Voss paused at the threshold and turned back. Every alien was watching her. "We've survived alone our entire history," she said calmly. "We'll take our chances." The doors closed behind them, leaving the consortium in disarray. Back on the horizon, the team prepared for departure in somber silence. Commander Patel finally voiced what they were all thinking. "Was that wise, Captain? Walking out on the most powerful organization in known space." Voss looked at the stars through the viewport. "They gave us no choice. They weren't looking for allies. They were looking for subjects." "Orders, Captain?" asked their pilot. Voss's expression was determined despite her apprehension. "Set course for Earth, maximum speed. The Security Council needs to know what we're facing." As the horizon accelerated away from the station, Voss thought about what would come next. The consortium wouldn't forget this perceived insult. Earth needed to prepare. "What will we tell the Council?" Chen asked quietly. Voss turned to her team, her resolve strengthening. "The truth, that humanity stands alone against the stars, and that we need to be ready." The ship jumped to FTL, leaving the consortium station behind. None of the humans looked back. In the Grand Chamber, Arch and Desrix watched the human ship disappear from monitoring screens. "They'll return within one galactic cycle," he said confidently to his inner council. "No species survives alone for long." He couldn't have been more wrong. The response: "They've been gone for 60 days, reported Councillor Valix of the Drenthi, his tentacles rippling with agitation. "No communication, no diplomatic outreach." Arch and Desrix dismissed the concern with a flick of his six-fingered hand, a momentary display of pride. When their colonies face resource shortages or pirate attacks, they will return with greater appreciation for our protection. The Grand Chamber was less crowded today, with only the representatives of the 12 founding species in attendance. They sat in their elevated positions, discussing the human departure as a minor annoyance. "Perhaps we should send a small fleet to their homeworld," suggested the purple-skinned Zithri delegate. "A demonstration of power might accelerate their understanding of reality." Desrix shook his head. "Unnecessary. Let them sit alone in their insignificant corner of the galaxy. Fear will accomplish our work for us." The Valhari had ruled the consortium for millennia. In that time, hundreds of species had joined the galactic community. All eventually accepted Valhari leadership, either willingly or through coercion. Only Mira, representative of the Solani, appeared troubled. The Solani had joined the consortium only 200 years ago, recently by galactic standards. "I studied human history extensively," she said, her luminescent skin pulsing with each word. "They adapt more rapidly than we might anticipate." The other council members turned toward her. Mira was young by their standards, her knowledge often dismissed despite her insight. "What precisely are you suggesting?" Desrix asked, more curious than concerned. Mira activated a holographic display showing Earth's technological progression. In a mere 300 years, they advanced from primitive atmospheric flight to faster-than-light travel. Their entire history is marked by accelerated responses to existential threats. The Zithri representative laughed, a high-pitched sound. "Many species develop quickly, then plateau. Humans will be no different." "Perhaps," Mira conceded, "but I recommend caution. Cornered species often develop in unexpected ways." Desrix sighed. "Your concern is noted, Councillor Mira, but unnecessary. Humans will soon learn that survival requires cooperation, on our terms." The meeting moved to other matters. No one paid attention when a junior officer quietly entered and handed a report to Desrix's aide. Later that cycle, in his private chambers, Desrix finally reviewed the report. It detailed unusual activity at human frontier outposts. Increased mining operations, new construction projects, and ships moving in patterns suggesting military exercises. For a moment, he felt a flicker of unease, then dismissed it. What could one young species possibly accomplish that the consortium couldn't counter? He placed the report in his low-priority queue and promptly forgot about it. Over the next 6 months, similar reports arrived with increasing frequency. All noted the same pattern. Earth was busy, too busy, and strangely quiet in their communications with neutral trading species. Each time, Desrix and the other consortium leaders dismissed the reports. The Valhari had dominated for 10 millennia. Humans had barely left their planet. There was no comparison. "Let them play with their ships and stations," Desrix told the council when Mira raised concerns again. "When resources run thin or raiders target their colonies, they'll return with newfound humility." What no one in the consortium understood was that humans had no intention of returning at all. In a secure facility beneath Earth's lunar surface, Captain Voss, now Admiral Voss, stood before the United Earth Defense Council. Representatives from every major nation watched as she presented her findings. "The consortium gave us 3 options," she said, scanning the serious faces before her. "Submit, perish, or become strong enough that they must respect us." The Secretary General nodded grimly. "Then our path is clear." On screens around the chamber, plans appeared. New ship designs, weapon systems, defense networks. Many were based on fragments of consortium technology the delegation had managed to record during their brief visit. "How long do we have?" asked the Chinese representative. Voss's expression was solemn. 8 months, perhaps a year, before they notice what we're doing. After that, we need to be ready. Across human space, a quiet revolution began. On Earth and every colony, people worked with singular purpose. The consortium had made a critical mistake. They had threatened humanity, and then they had looked away. 9 months after the humans walked away, the first incident occurred. A consortium mining outpost near the edge of human space went silent. The monitoring station reported no distress call, no signs of attack. The facility was simply empty when inspectors arrived, key equipment and data cores missing. Before the consortium could investigate further, 3 more outposts went dark. Then a research station, then a small colony. All showed the same pattern. No violence, just hasty evacuation and missing technology. In the Grand Chamber, the mood had shifted from dismissal to concern. "This is no coincidence," Mira said, standing before the other representatives. "These facilities are all within 2 jumps of human territory." The Zithri delegate hissed in disbelief. "Are you suggesting humans are responsible? They don't possess technology sophisticated enough to disable our security systems." "Perhaps they didn't 9 months ago," Mira replied quietly. Desrix finally took the matter seriously when one of the consortium's largest trading hubs near human space went dark. 7,000 beings of various species simply gone. "Enough," he declared. "Send the 4th Fleet to the human border. Find out what's happening." Commander Tarn of the Valhari military stood on the bridge of the largest warship in the 4th Fleet. 30 vessels moved through space behind him, a show of force that had made many species surrender on sight. Approaching the last known position of the trading hub, his navigator reported. "Scanning for debris or escape pods." "Commander," the sensor officer suddenly called. "Multiple contacts ahead." Tarn moved to the view screen. What he saw made him freeze. A line of ships hung in space before them. Human ships. But these weren't the simple vessels humans had previously employed. These were massive, dark warships with sleek profiles and weapon ports that glowed with energy. Behind them, half hidden in the shadow of an asteroid field, were orbital platforms bristling with what appeared to be defense systems. "How many?" Tarn asked, his voice barely audible. 64 ships detected, Commander, and 26 defense platforms." "Impossible," Tarn whispered. "Humans couldn't have built this fleet in mere months, unless they had been preparing long before their first contact." "We're receiving an automated message from the human fleet," his communications officer reported. A simple text message appeared on screen. "United Earth Defense Force vor der Patrol. UAKVENTRED restricted space. Maintain QRRENT position. Do note APPOHH closer than 500,000 KILOMETRs." Tarn's second-in-command, a young Valhari named Krell, moved to his side. "They're bluffing," Krell said confidently. "Those ships likely appear more impressive than they actually are. We should demonstrate our superior capabilities." Tarn studied the human formations carefully. Something about them seemed oddly familiar. "Those patterns," he said slowly. "They're similar to our own defensive formations, but with variations I've never seen." Tarn realized with growing unease that the humans had been studying consortium tactics. The Council had dismissed humans as primitive, but these ships told a different story. This wasn't a hastily assembled defense. This was a meticulously prepared welcome. "We hold position," Tarn decided. "No aggressive maneuvers." "But Commander, our orders." "Our orders were to investigate, not initiate a war," Tarn interrupted. As the consortium fleet maintained its position, more human ships emerged from behind moons and asteroids. They took up precise formations, their weapon systems energized but not firing. The message was clear: "We are ready for you." Tarn opened a channel to Arkshan Desrix. The Council needed to know that humanity was no longer hiding. Archandesrix paced in the Grand Chamber, his long robes sweeping the floor. Commander Tarn's report had disturbed him deeply. "This is unacceptable," he finally announced to the assembled council. "Humans cannot be permitted to establish a military presence of this magnitude without consortium approval." The 12 senior councilors murmured in agreement. Only Mira remained silent, her bioluminescence dimmed in thought. "I authorize corrective action," Desrix declared. "Commander Tarn will demonstrate our power and remind the humans of their place in the galaxy." Back at the border, Tarn received his new orders with a heavy heart. 20 cycles of military service had taught him to recognize dangerous situations. This was one of them. "Sir, the humans have sent another message," his communications officer reported. "They say any hostile action will be met with equal force." Tarn nodded solemnly. "Send the response," the council ordered. The message was simple. "By DECRE of the Galactic Consortium, human forces must stand down and says you be not IT to inspection. Failure to TOMPLI will result in immediate action." The humans didn't respond. "Move the fleet forward," Tarn ordered reluctantly. "Target their lid ship with warning shots only." The massive consortium warships advanced toward the human line, weapon systems charging, their energy signatures illuminating space. "Sir," the sensor officer called, "the human ships are changing configuration." On the view screen, Tarn watched as the human vessels shifted position. Some seemed to shimmer and partially disappear from sensors. Others rotated to present different weapon arrays. "Fire warning shots," Tarn commanded. 2 kilometers from their flagship. Energy beams lanced out from the consortium ships, but something strange happened. The beams curved slightly before reaching their target, missing by significantly more than 2 kilometers. "What happened?" Tarn demanded. Before anyone could answer, the sensor officer shouted, "Energy spike from human vessels." Space illuminated as the human ships opened fire, but not in the way anyone expected. Their weapons didn't emit the standard blue-white energy beams of conventional space weapons. These were different, pulses of amber light that seemed to phase in and out of normal space. The first shots hit a consortium cruiser. Instead of impacting against its energy shields, they passed straight through as if the shields weren't there. The ship's hull ruptured, venting atmosphere into space. "Impossible," Krell shouted. "Nothing can bypass our shields." But the evidence was right before them. 3 more consortium ships were hit, their shields useless against the strange human weapons. "Return fire," Tarn ordered, knowing it might be too late. The consortium fleet unleashed its full power. Energy beams and plasma torpedoes streaked toward the human line, but most missed their targets completely, as if the human ships weren't quite where they appeared to be. Those shots that did connect revealed another surprise. The human ships had energy shields, technology that should be far beyond their capabilities. Even more shocking, the shields seemed to adapt after each hit, becoming stronger against that specific weapon type. "They've been studying our technology," Tarn realized aloud. "Not just copying it, improving it." 7 consortium ships were crippled or destroyed in the first 3 minutes of battle. Not a single human vessel showed significant damage. "Retreat," Tarn ordered, swallowing his pride. "All ships, full reverse. Get us out of range." As the consortium fleet withdrew, the human ships did not pursue. They remained in their defensive formation, weapons ready but no longer firing. In the Grand Chamber, stunned silence greeted Tarn's battle report. 7 capital ships lost without destroying a single human vessel. "How is this possible?" the Zithri representative finally asked, his voice no longer confident. Mira stood, her 4 eyes meeting each council member's gaze in turn. "I warned you," she said simply. "We underestimated them." Desrix's hands trembled slightly. For the first time in centuries, he felt something he had almost forgotten. Fear. 2 weeks after the failed attack, border skirmishes spread along human space. Most ended the same way, with consortium ships retreating after taking heavy damage. In one engagement, something unexpected happened. A human officer was captured when her small scout vessel was disabled. The consortium military brought her to a secure facility for questioning. Commander Maya Chen, the same diplomat who had stood with Captain Voss months earlier, sat calmly in the interrogation chamber. Unlike most captives, she showed no fear of her alien captors. How did humans advance so quickly? The Valhari interrogator demanded. Your technology is beyond what should be possible for your species. Chen simply stared back, silent. After hours of questioning with no results, Mira requested permission to speak with the prisoner. Desrix agreed, desperate for answers. Mira entered the room alone and sat across from Chen. I am not here to threaten you, she said gently. I truly wish to understand. Chen studied her for a long moment. Something about this luminescent alien seemed different from the others. You really want to know? She finally asked. We never wanted war. Then why prepare for one? Mira asked. Because you left us no choice, Chen replied. When our delegation returned from the peace talks, they brought back more than just rejection. They brought data. Chen leaned forward. Our scientists studied the consortium station while we were there. We learned two critical things. Mira waited, her bioluminescence pulsing with anticipation. First, your technology isn't as advanced as you pretend. You've been using the same systems for millennia with minimal innovation, Chen explained, her eyes hardening. Second, and more importantly, we discovered that the Valhari and their closest allies have been deliberately holding back other species, keeping them dependent. Mira's breathing quickened. This was something many newer consortium species had suspected but could never prove. How? She asked quietly. By controlling access to key resources, by sabotaging independent research, by making newer members believe they need consortium protection when they don't. Chen answered, her words hanging in the air between them. We decided that if the consortium wouldn't accept us as equals, we would have to protect ourselves, she continued. But we didn't just build weapons. We reached out. To whom? Mira asked, though she already suspected the answer. To other species like yours. Those who joined the consortium recently. Those treated as second-class citizens. In the Grand Chamber, chaos erupted when Mira shared Chen's revelations. Several representatives of newer species demanded answers. Is it true? The Solani representative shouted at Desrix. Have you been deliberately keeping us technologically dependent? The Zithri representative stood. These are human lies. They're trying to divide us. Then explain why our scientific breakthroughs mysteriously fail whenever we research certain technologies, demanded the Drenthi representative. As accusations flew, an aide rushed into the chamber. Urgent report. He called over the noise. We're receiving word of uprisings on multiple resource worlds. Desrix's face paled. Which worlds? All of them. Arkan. Across consortium space, the newer species are revolting against consortium authority, and they're using human weapons. The chamber fell silent. The humans didn't just study our technology, Mira explained into the silence. They shared their innovations with those you've kept subordinate for generations. They offered respect instead of dominance. Desrix slowly sank into his seat, the weight of understanding finally settling on him. Humans hadn't been planning for war with the consortium. They had been planning a revolution. In his private chambers later, Desrix reviewed reports of consortium authority collapsing across multiple sectors. 8 species had already declared independence, forming a coalition with humans. A message from Admiral Voss appeared on his screen. You still have a chance for peace, but this time as equals. Desrix closed his eyes. The galaxy had changed forever, all because the consortium had refused to treat one species with respect. 1 year had passed since humans walked away from the peace talks. The galaxy had transformed more in that year than in the previous millennium. Admiral Ilara Voss stood outside the Grand Chamber, straightening her uniform. With her were representatives from 8 former consortium species who now formed the alliance of independent systems alongside humanity. "Are you ready, Admiral?" asked Mira, who had become Earth's strongest ally. Voss nodded. "Let's hope they're ready to listen this time." The chamber doors opened. Inside, the room looked the same, but the atmosphere was entirely different. Many seats stood empty. The Valhari still led what remained of the consortium, but their power had diminished dramatically. Archon Desrix watched as Voss and her allies entered. The human walked with confidence, not the uncertainty of her first visit. "Admiral Voss," Desrix said, his voice lacking its former arrogance. "The consortium welcomes you back." Voss stood tall, her gaze steady. "This time, we'll talk about real peace as equals." A new era had begun.